will say is that from the beginning of my days as coach, I had passion and belief that coach could mean something. And being a purpose-driven individual, I associated coach from the very beginning with the best of America. And I saw my workforce when we only had 100 people in 1980 as a microcosm of America, all immigrants, children or grandchildren of immigrants, at a time when the middle class was burgeoning, the purchasing power was growing. And I thought to myself, as we become more of a global society and we do everything right and we try real hard at Coach, we might be able to build something that would endure.
Hi, and welcome to Handbag Designer 101, the podcast with your host, Emily Blumenthal, handbag industry expert and the handbag fairy godmother. Each week, we uncover the stories behind the handbags we love, from the iconic brands and top designers to the creativity, craftsmanship, and culture that define the handbag world. Whether you're a designer, collector, or simply passionate about handbags, this is your front row seat to it all. Welcome, Lew Frankfort, the man, the myth, the legend, the bag man. I've never been so excited to have someone. I think you're almost my 200th episode here. Welcome to Handbag Designer 101, the podcast.
Glad to be with you, Emily.
Are you really? Tell me the truth.
I'm happy to be here because in many ways you're the bag lady if I'm the bag man.
I guess. Have any of the podcasts or interviews you've been on, have they gone into the weeds on the bags? I'm just curious with your story.
Not one interview discussed the making of the bag or how we decided to build the architecture for a collection, or even a discussion of consumer personas. Or we did discuss shopping motivation, and we did discuss values in the context of how we at Coach approached building collections, storytelling, product innovation, enhancements, and the alike.
Do you still follow what's going on with the brand, or are you kind of like, I've graduated from the school, I'll stop by? Or when you walk, because I know where your office is so close to the Columbus Circle location, do you feel compelled to walk the store and be like, I don't know about that? Are you okay? Like, they've got this.
I'm more than okay. I do think Todd and Stuart are really excellent stewards of the brand. They both get the DNA of the brand. They also are really very focused on Gen Z, and what they have done over the last handful of years demonstrates actually their leadership, their team, and the power and love that Coach enjoys from people worldwide.
I think, and we spoke about this, we had a brief chat yesterday, that to work at Coach, your blood type changes to Coach. I think it has to, because it is one of the brands I know that has a very low turnover. And I think that speaks to a lot of the culture that you 100% created. I think because it's such an intense brand in terms of the meticulous nature that it follows the journey of the customer. So I think it's really, really interesting to see. And also, I mean, kudos to you, of course, on a kabillion levels, but to say such good things about the people who you've handed this brand off to. Like, the oversized clutch that went down the runway, giant oversized clutch.
I know it well. One of my daughters wears it and enjoys it.
As she should. But I was thinking, like, I wonder what Lew thinks about that bag and where did that come from before? Because I know I've seen it. And how much of this, because I can see Bonnie Cashin's influence coming back in bits and pieces.
Well, I will say it's really Stuart Viva's in partnership with Todd. I recruited Stewart. And I remember during the interviewing process sitting on the floor with him where he did design sketches and we talked about brand codes. We talked about brand personality. And it was clear to me that he really was a student of the brand and felt a responsibility to build on its equities. And Stewart is also a big fan of Americana, uh, and is a new American in many ways, as I am. And even though I was born in the United States, and what Stewart, with Todd's partnership and team, what they have done is gone back to the past to go to the future, galvanizing their efforts around social change, culture, and values of Gen Z, which is right on spot.
Yeah. Did you ever feel, because again, being a quote unquote handbag expert or handbag designer expert, I fall into the class of people who were never trained in design. I have made myself become a fashion historian, specifically within the realm of handbags. I have put a lot of work into learning the origin of certain silhouettes and what was the why when they came up. Considering where you started, I know that working with Miles, it was probably a daunting task for you to kind of swallow all this information and learn it and digest it. Did you ever find it challenging to try and figure out so much about handbags when all of a sudden you were responsible for growing this teeny tiny brand that had such a loyal following?
I spent a great deal of time in my first 12 and 24 months at Coach learning about our customer, learning about bags and the role that they played in people's lives and how that varied based upon the nature of the consumer, demographics, psychographics. I studied competition both in the US and globally, and I developed a very early belief, as early as 1980 is my first notes on it, of building a democratized luxury brand. And where I came from was a place of curiosity to really understand how important are branded handbags in people's lives in the United States. And the reality was not very important in 1980. Yet there was an emerging middle class. There was a growing interest in brands broadly that could deliver on the promise of, and in Coach's case, was function, durability, a leather that gets better with time, a patina, good value, and
The baseball mitt.
baseball mitt. So very early, it was clear to me that over the next generation, there would be an explosion of suburban malls as the migration to the suburbs continued, as baby boomers developed families and had disposable income from their professional jobs, most of whom were first-time college graduates, all starting back in the late 40s with the GI Bill and Levittown and then planned suburbs. What I actually did was study successful brands in other, what I would call more developed markets. And the brand that I admired the most was Louis Vuitton, which at the time was a small French brand with about 20 or 25 stores. But they controlled their destiny. It was their own design, their own merchandising, their own team. And I thought that if I could eliminate barriers between us and the consumer by offering product directly, we would be able to do a more effective job in building the brand and the business. I was also mindful that the younger generation at the time, Gen X, was looking to shop in different ways. So we started a mail order business in 1980. And I convinced the founder in 1981 to allow me to open our first retail store, which I did on Madison Avenue and 65th Street in 1981, 754 Madison Avenue. There's a lot in my memoir about the resistance I got from colleagues at Coach who asked me if I could go back to city government when the store failed. I got very good counsel from Marvin Traub, the head of Bloomingdale's,
the legend,
who privately told me it was the smartest thing I could do. At the time,
but don't tell anybody.
Yes. And at the time, department stores represented 30% of U.S. retail sales. Today, they might represent 7%. It was clear to me that younger consumers were looking for different avenues to shop because the department store consumer, even back in the 1980s, was growing older by 9 and 10 months every year. And after a number of years, you can add that up, and it could be add up to 10 years. And so the average department store consumer who might have been 35 in 1980 was 43 in 1990 and close to 50 in the year 2000. And their children were shopping differently in different places.
Can I tell you, you said something that I say so much, that so many retailers and people in retail overall complain, oh, no one's shopping, people aren't going to malls, people aren't going out. And I've always said, people are still shopping, they are shopping differently, and you have to follow the crumbs of their lifestyle. And one of the interesting things, and I've had a few handbag designer incubators, and one of the key points that so many brands neglect to do, and it's mind blowing to me because it's you are like, your essence of tracking the data to me was like, I was reading it, I'm like, yep, check, that follow the zip codes. Follow the zip codes. And so many brands don't follow the zip codes. And the fact that you were able to reverse engineer where these customers were, their psychographics, and understanding from a retail anthropological angle of how and why they shopped. And that then goes into how you're designing a product. Like, someone older needs a lining that they can see because they need glasses. Certain ages need function, need more structure in the bag. And following all that, like being an early adopter to recognizing, okay, we need to make sure this can fit a laptop. No, the leather's too heavy. They can't carry the laptop. And it's all of that so many people neglect. And I think, I don't want this to be a whole podcast about saying how awesome you are, but it's going to end up being that way, that it's just, you hit all these notes that I feel like is such a case study of not even so much to run a handbag brand, but it's like how to run a brand, because all this information that so many people, so many brands tend to swell with the head, they tend to neglect. It's like, if you're not designing into the lifestyle of your customer will abandon you. They don't need you. They can always find someone else.
That's true. And to your point earlier, which I agree, when you say follow the breadcrumbs, it's quite a great visual. I wanted to do more than follow the breadcrumbs. I wanted to understand where the path was going to wind up in 2 and 3 years. So much of what we did was study prior behavior, current behavior, and you can track across so many different dimensions where likely future behavior is. And that helped us develop entry strategies for new markets. So in the case of Japan, which was dominated only by European luxury brands, and at the time, Japan was entirely an X-shaped economy, huge middle class, almost virtually no poverty, and certainly no ultra millionaires. Today, there are a few billionaires, but it's still largely an X-shaped economy. It used to be called a perfect economy because unemployment never went above 3%. Unfortunately, they were afflicted by some of the woes of the world, and because of their immigration policies, their population has shrunk. But when we entered Japan, the market was mature and flat.
Yep.
and 90% of the dollars plus was European luxury brands. But what was clear to me was there was an opportunity for a democratized luxury brand, which would be more accessible based upon price point, based upon location, in an environment that wouldn't be snooty. And we took New York to Japan, and we focused on the young female who, in the year 1990, was for the first time thinking about a professional career rather than going to college to prepare to be a homemaker. And she was traveling more around the world. She was delaying marriage. The glass ceiling was breaking in Japan. And we focused on giving young Japanese women a great product at a fraction of the price that a European product would cost, in image-enhancing venues, in adjacencies to the European luxury brands. And what we basically were able to give consumers was a bag for 40,000 yen that would have cost 100,000 yen for a bag of similar materials, similar construction. And in that savings of $600 when the yen was 100 to $1, they would be able to spend a weekend
to travel.
Travel, exactly. And we became, and still are, the number $2 brand in Japan and the number one unit brand. Interestingly, the market grew substantially after Coach's entry, although we took market share from every European brand, with no exception.
And it's just because I told you I did my MBA thesis on Coach's expansion to Japan pyramid that you had in the book. I'm like, I had that. It was in my paper. I'm like, yep. Andrea shared that with me. She's like, here's some imagery you can use. I'm like, oh, I'm using that and I'm using that. And so I saw it. I'm like, I've seen this all before. I want to kind of go back to the handbag story here. Just some random, because I know you had to edit this down. Were there bags, again, that because I love, you got to love an autobiography, but the pictures and having like the history of the Coach bags, like that is such a fun nugget. You really should sell that as a poster. I'm just giving you some merch ideas, just
good,
FYI.
nice idea.
Yeah. We will talk more about that after. I got ideas. And the funny thing is about you being such a numbers person is that you pull the emotion out of the product, right? Because you're looking at this from like in terms of ethnography. Okay, we've created something. It doesn't fit into her life. We're going to drop it, kill it. That's it. Were there bags that you were surprised that did well, that you're like, this isn't going to work? Like all my numbers, and then boom, you're like, who knew that this bucket bag people would be into? Was there a specific silhouette that you were shocked, that you were like, oh, I didn't put my numbers on that pony?
If you ever wanted to start a handbag line and didn't know where to start, this is for you.
Living proof that independent designers can make it big.
Absolutely. Blumenthal is one prime example.
If you had dreams of becoming a handbag designer and didn't know where to start, this is for you. If you have a handbag brand and are in need of strategy and direction, this is for you. I'm Emily Blumenthal, handbag fairy godmother and handbag designer expert, and this is Handbag Designer 101, the masterclass. Over the next 10 classes, I will break down everything you need to know how to make, market, and manufacture a handbag. Broken down for you that you'll not only skip steps in that handbag building process, but also save money in that learning curve. For the past 20 years, I've been teaching at the top fashion universities in New York City, created the Handbag Awards, and also the Handbag Designer 101 podcast. I'm going to show you like I have countless brands, from sketch to sample to shelf, whether you're just starting out and don't know where to begin, or even if you have a handbag line and just need some strategic direction, the Handbag Designer 101 Masterclass is just for you. So let's get started, and you will be the creator of the next It Bag. Join me, Emily Blumenthal, with the Handbag Designer 101 Masterclass.
Well, the basic surprises that we had had to do with the boundless potential that we found. And the way we thought about bags, as an example, I refer to them as carrying vessels because I wanted people to think about them as something that you put other things in. So as an example, when we introduced Coach backpacks in the late 1980s, little could I understand, it quickly became 20% of our dollar sales, a small group of backpacks. And these are not, and when I say small, one might be called a day pack, with a little turn lock. But for the most part, they were bags where you could take things for work and play, commuting, weekend, gym, it's overnight. And at one point, we did have a store in the Old World Trade Center, and there was a 3-month period where it was over 25% of dollar sales, just backpacks. And because there was a big void in the marketplace for quality backpacks that had the level of function and division and organization that people wanted. So really, I mean, we did have lemons, of course, but by the time we actually introduced something, because of the testing and the piloting, we're using our own teams to systematically evaluate. Reed or I, or more recently Stuart, would walk around with bags and we would show it to 50 people and write down, and they give them a short questionnaire. Consumers are smart, and being a brand where we feel that we are responsible to build all of our communities, including our customer community, we ask them all the time for questions, only on the upside. And of course, Signature, when we introduced Signature, we never dreamt that it would lead to 20, 30, 40% comp store sales for a number of years, because we were able to extend the personality of the brand into a material way and a look that particularly international consumers in Asia were accustomed to and embraced, without alienating any of our existing customers.
Can I ask you something, though? Because there's a lot of science, right? There's the lipstick strategy or the lipstick effect, and then there's the hemline story, the relationship of all these things that go back to what's going on in the market, right? There are certain ways that one can see where the market's going based on the structure of a handbag. So if structure comes back and with lots of compartments and so forth, the market is perceived a certain way, that people are pulling back. They want to hold on. They want everything together. When big, oversized, hobo, slouchy, you can see how it reflects with how people are spending and so forth. They say that historically, and again, you would know this considering you're closer to product, that the spike in backpack sales came a lot with people moving forward and not wanting to look behind, that they were comfortable with the security of leaving things behind them and
Yes.
moving forward. And this also, of course, goes to color within the color palette, because what a lot of people don't realize is if you're going into production, and obviously consumers have no need to know any of this, but to do shorter runs of product costs the people who make it more because you don't have economies of scale. So if you're able to offer more color, then the brand is doing better, because you can offer everything, of course, at the same price point. You can't offer purple at a different price point than chocolate brown. So there are all these like little things that most people don't know, that you know, that I know. Would you say that the growth of backpacks at that time was affiliated with a mindset, or the growth of logos had to go with a certain mindset of what was going on at the time? Do you think that you can see that connection?
The answer is yes. However, the way in which we approached things had to do with share of closet, share of women's closet. So from my very early days, where I would go into women friends' homes and say, "May I look at your bag closet?" And I would go in and we would talk about number of bags in the closet. And we also knew that women bought 2 bags a year. Now, by the year 2000, thanks to Coach and other brands, they were buying more than 4 bags a year because bags and accessories were playing a larger role in their wardrobing, particularly with relaxation and dress code and the like. Women could express themselves with a red briefcase and didn't need to be black. But for us, it was share of closet. And so we understood product groupings. When we introduced backpacks in a serious way, it was clear to us among men and women that this was an opportunity. We measured the size of backpacks. We saw who sold them, LLB, mostly, let's call it modest priced bags. But we saw many of our Coach fans carrying nylon backpacks.
Prada
and we
bags.
thought,
The nylon Prada backpack time slot.
yes, it was very clear that if we want to increase share of closet, we had to focus on different usage occasions and try to understand how many bags does a woman use actively, and how does that vary, whether she's a classic consumer, a fashion consumer, an aspirational consumer, working, a stay-at-home mom versus someone who's commuting on the LIRR. And for each of these personas, we understood what spending power they had, and we understood their levels of loyalty. And we continued to work to really build Coach's share of closet so that we became, at one point, we peaked at 45% of dollar sales in the United States of all bags.
Can I ask you, was there ever a time before you moved to mixed materials, because I know Coach was skiving leather long before anybody else was, at least selling it that way. Did anyone ever, because my first work bag was a Coach bag, and it was a very sturdy, dark, masculine looking bag. And I still remember it, and I carried that thing around. Did anyone ever take into consideration the weight? Because I used to joke that Marc Jacobs bags at its peak should come with an orthopedist number because those bags were so heavy. And it's funny, I've had Joy Grayson on the podcast, who was one of the designers of that time. And she's like, yeah, the bags were so heavy, but the customer at the time, that wasn't her concern. It was the product and the weight after.
We actually developed Coach lightweights in the early 1990s. So the typical leather that we use through today is what we call 6-ounce glove pad cowhide.
It's cow, yeah.
What we did, it's still cow, but what we did was we split the leather so it would be half the weight. So we used 3-ounce. And we developed a group of drapier, softer bags that would lend themselves to the lighter weight nature of the bags. And Coach lightweights exist through today. Coach no longer calls them lightweights, but we successfully expanded the range of product and as well as our appeal by introducing brands that would have more shape, more angle to it, and be it would be more than half the weight because the buckles and the hardware would generally be the same. It would be 60% of the weight. But generally speaking, there is little to no resistance with a 6-ounce leather.
It's funny because I've seen so many independent designers really try with lamb, because lambskin is lighter, it's softer, it's got a nicer hand feel, but you're not going to get the same, just breaking down to just the animal in itself, you have less room for error in cow. It's a bigger skin. So I think that speaks a lot to understanding the customer, what she needs, obviously cost, obviously wastage. I think that's a really good point. And just as a side note, as someone who has been shopping vintage for the better part of my life, when I had my own handbag brand, It was so traumatizing for me to go shop at retail purely because I had tried to sell my product into every single store that I ended up shopping vintage. And I became a Coach expert because without fail, the most popular bag you will find at a flea market is a Coach bag purely because it still retains its shape. It still retains almost everything. You know, you shine up the twist lock, it's still good. So I don't know. Again, I'm just bringing that up because I do know that. I want to just jump to one thing. And I think, you touched on it. Bobby, your wife, she had her own handbag brand throughout this whole thing. And I know you said the caveat of getting hired into Coach was you were told like, you can't help her and do this at the same time.
That's correct.
Now, my community, my people are handbag designers. It's all the people who aspire to get to where you are. Like you're at the top of that pyramid. Did you see her pack, ship, tag? And what was it like for you to see someone who was trying to build a brand grassroots while here you are like counting numbers and able to get into the psychographics of your customer and she's still doing it? Not the same. Like that must have been interesting for you and her.
It was a good experience. She maintained the business for more than 20 years, and what we might call a handbag, she referred to it as a diaper bag, and she focused on new mothers of new children. So it was a very specific lane that she traveled in. So, and in that context, she was extremely successful. And of course, at the same time, raising our 3 children and was president of the Board of Education for many years in Tenafly. So she had a very complete and rich, diverse career, which was very fulfilling for her. And she was not looking to really build a global baby accessories business. So she stayed in a lane and became a leading brand among specialty stores, better stores.
What year did Coach develop a diaper bag? Because Bobby was an early adopter. That was a brand new category. When all of a sudden Skip Hop came out, and when Skip Hop came out, then everybody was jumping into this baby bag. So go Bobby. But what year did Coach do it? Do you remember?
I remember the period within a few years. Around 1993, 95, we developed diaper bags, but we found it to be too small a niche for us, because when women were looking to buy carriages and furnish their new child's room, they would go to specialty stores, Kids R Us, or they would go to family-run stores. They would sometimes occasionally go to department stores and the baby goods department. So the lead channels is when someone's buying a carriage to have a diaper bag right there. That way they can add 30% to the purchase. And Bobby had a distinctive, patentable strap that showed it could go around a stroller or carriage and still wear on the shoulder. So Coach wasn't the best channel to sell bags, diaper bags, even though back then the birth rate was twice what it is today. As you know, birth rate in the U.S. is down to about 1.4 births. It was well over, it was like 2.7. So
I know.
The number of children being born in the United States, holding population constant, is close to only 60% of what it was 30, 40 years ago.
I know. I want to know what happened to that 0.4 baby. So it's one of those things, right? It's funny when a new category just pops up, and as a brand, you have to take the deep decision of saying, like, are we going to be part of this, or is this not our customer? So seeing it from another lens of wanting to make sure you don't miss a window versus we need to ride this out because she is not one of us, not yet. Maybe she'll come back to us because, again, the data and having worked with enough designers, the only people who buy diaper bags are new moms. That's it. The second mom, the third mom, she has no need for it. She's already, if anything, she realizes that it's not something she needs. She carries less and less. You got to know your customer. So I think that's really interesting. I'm just so fascinated by that dynamic of saying, like, seeing someone who's doing it on a specialty level versus growing at a rapid rate and saying, like, you know, what you should do is this. And her being like, I've got this. This is not that. That's not my customer.
No, we stayed in our own lanes, although Barbie did advise me on people issues, of course, and the complexities of building teams, evolving teams, new markets, comings and goings, all of that. What I will say is that from the beginning of my days at Coach, I had passion and belief that Coach could mean something. And being a purpose-driven individual, I associated Coach from the very beginning with the best of America. And I saw my workforce when we only had 100 people in 1980 as a microcosm of America, all immigrants, children or grandchildren of immigrants, at a time when the middle class was burgeoning, the purchasing power was growing. And I thought to myself, as we become more of a global society and we do everything right and we try real hard at Coach, we might be able to build something that would endure. So my satisfaction today, Coach is in its ninth decade with a recent resurgence. It's at its all-time high in sales, all-time high in market cap, and it is a true legacy brand because it has lived and continues to live in the hearts and minds of consumers, generations of consumers. And just to close on Stuart and under Stuart and Todd, the expansion into the coffee shops, experiential retail is brilliant. The idea of vintage bags and Coachtopia, all of these initiatives really are in the zeitgeist of Gen Z, who in many ways remind me of my generation, the 60s. They want truth. They want authenticity. They want a better world. They're not going to accept arbitrary authority. They want to live their life the way they want to. And their wants and needs are very different than their much older siblings or their parents. And while today they only represent 15% of purchasing power, they will represent 35% in 15 years. And Coach is really focused on meeting and understanding their culture, their wants, how they shop, where they shop. TikTok, they want instantaneous gratification. They are concerned with the planet, recycling materials. They love the idea of buying vintage bags. We get it. And Coach gets it big time. And so I know we're just about out of time. And that was my commercial that Coach is powerful and thriving. And I'm so proud of everyone who is contributing to that.
Well, I hope you were able to get some sort of final validation from Miles when all was said and done of you taking his itty bitty brand and his wife saying, hire this guy. So they did good.
I will tell you, may Miles rest in peace. I remember visiting him in his home when he was in his early 90s. And he said to me, Lew, I'm flabbergasted by what you were able to do with the brand. I chose not to remind him that 20 years earlier, he said to me, even though I was not qualified to run his $20 million business, if I helped him sell the business, he would recommend that I become CEO. And I thought that was not necessary. But yes, he was very shocked and surprised and pleased.
And did you say, I'm not? I knew all along.
No, never do that.
Well, I can say
never do that.
I know, I was just kidding. Well, I can tell you I knew the whole time. So, had he asked me, I would have told him he made the right decision. Lew Frankfort, the bag man, thank you. And you can get this where any place books are sold. I am so honored that we were able to have you. And selfishly, I get to say, because I'm the only one who has a podcast about handbags, I was able to get you because I don't know if I would have otherwise. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Wow. And it's been a pleasure, Emily, and we'll see each other soon, I'm sure.
Yes.
Take care.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate and review and follow us on every single platform at Handbag Designer. Thanks so much. See you next time.